All right. So again, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our training today. It's going to be more like a webinar-like, to be honest. I have a lot that I want to cover with you. I will try as much as possible to take a deep dive into some of the information that I wanted to share with you today. But you would agree with me that it's not possible to demystify third-party risk management, combined with intro to cybersecurity in 2 hours. All right, it's practically impossible to do that. It's almost, if you actually wanted to learn it, it would take about 5 good days, even more than that, to learn or to demystify all the concepts around third-party risk management. So today, I will be focusing on a few areas of third-party risk management. Not everything is an entirety, but just very few areas I'm going to be focusing on. But what I'm going to be sharing with you today, trust me, you're going to leave here well-informed. Somebody's going to leave here encouraged. Somebody can feel that, oh yeah, maybe I have an idea of what third-party risk is, but now I even understand it better. So that is my intention today. All right. So like I said earlier on, please feel free to ask questions. Use the chat box if you have any questions, just like Ife did earlier on. Raise your hand up, and I will unmute you and you can ask your questions. All right, you can ask your questions. You can be audible and everybody would hear you. All right. So again, thank you. Just few housekeeping rules. I have some of my colleagues on the call as well. I've got Tunde Shogalu, and I also have Timothy Alabi. There might be other people on the call, like Harry Buja and a few other people. They also would be helping out. So where you have typed in your question in the chat box, don't worry, they will coordinate all of that, and at some point they will let me know, and I would either unmute you or I would attend to those questions. Okay, so thank you. So I want you to please, in the next few hours, and the answer to me. All right, I know you are the comfort of your home, maybe like doing other things. Just listen. I think there's a whole lot that you can take away from here today. I'll try as much as possible to make this session practical. I will use a whole lot of real world examples. All right, so thank you. So let's move on. Okay, so while we're here today, we're going to be looking at the subject of introduction to cybersecurity. Then focus, which is the latter part of the training, we're going to be talking about third-party risk management. All right, but before I get there, I thought that it would be more wise or sensible to look at some key terminologies. I don't want to take any assumption. Some of you, you might have an idea of what cybersecurity is. As a matter of fact, some of the key terminologies that I have here, you must have heard it before. You're familiar with it. You know what it is. But please just hear me and listen to me, because what you know might be correct. It might not be entirely correct, but I believe that there's 1 or 2 things that you can learn from here today. All right. So it's important that we talk about some key terminologies. So there are many key terminologies in cybersecurity as a whole, but I've just carefully selected a few, not so many, all right, just a few. I don't know, maybe about maybe 12 of them or 11 of them to talk about today. And this is as it relates to the subject of introduction to cybersecurity, and also the third-party risk management that I intend to teach you or to show you today. So let's start by talking about what threat is. All right, so this is a common terminologies, and I use the word terminologies, or sometimes I use the word vocabulary. Reason because you see, if you have a doctor friend, and if you have maybe like 5 doctor friends or 3 doctor friends, and you're not a doctor, all right, if they are talking about their trade or their heart or whatever it is, they use certain linguas, All right, they will call certain names, they will call certain things, and sometimes you might just find it a little bit difficult, to comprehend them. Okay, and not because you're stupid, not because you're less, intelligent. It's just because, you see, in that industry, in that particular sector, they have vocabularies, they have linguas, they have keywords, that they use. All right. So it is as well in cybersecurity. And if you're going to make anything out of cybersecurity, so I don't know where you are in your career, whether you're at the beginner level or you're at the intermediate level, or you're, still working very hard to get, to the advanced level. So if you are at the beginner level, then it's important for you to understand these key terminologies, because this is what you're going to be talking, this is the lingua, that you're going to be talking every day, whether in your meeting, at workplace, or when you want to go and interview. So it's important to know what it is and how they are both, each of this lingua, are intertwined. All right, that's very important. So that's the objective of starting with, key terminology. So let's start with, cybersecurity threat. So cybersecurity threat, and the threat is if you look at it from a generic viewpoint, is a lingua or that all of us use. So someone can say, oh, that's as a matter of fact, what is happening in our world at the moment, and a lot of us can relate to this. So, at the moment in Europe, we have the Ukraine and the Russia war, and the entire world, maybe except for a few, is against Russia in terms of the invasion. And you can use the word that, Russia is becoming a threat to the entire world, because every time, someone tried to support, when I say someone, a nation tried to support, Ukraine, then, Putin will come and start to, threat everybody with, with nuke. It's going to say, oh, I'm going to use the nuclear weapon. All right. So we use that word. We can use that word. Even when we read newspapers, they say, that they are a threat, that Russia is a threat to the entire world, by reason of their act or their intentions. All right. So also in cybersecurity as well, we use that word cybersecurity threat. So cybersecurity threat is a malicious act that seeks to damage data. And I want you to know some certain keywords, damage, all right, is an act that seeks to damage something. But in this context, we will talk about cybersecurity, all right, that act that seeks to damage something, and that something is data or sometimes, information, all right? So any act that anybody carries out, all right, that would destroy, data, that would destroy data, that would, destroy information, that act can be considered, a cyber threat, all right? And that damage could result into stealing of data, anything that could disrupt digital life in general. We consider that, cyber threat. When I say digital life, it just simply means, look at us today. I don't know, most of you are connected from, I don't know, some people are in Africa, a few people are in the UK here. Wherever you are connected to, what is powering, this communication today is Zoom, all right? So we're all connected by reason of Zoom. We're all connected through Zoom, but Zoom have to depend on internet connection, all right, to make that work, all right? So if you have Zoom and you do not have internet, then, Zoom will not work. So Zoom actually depends on the internet, for it to work. So that is an example of a digital life. So you can imagine if there is a destruction, all right, in internet connection, all right, then the whole world can be put into a type of chaos, all right? So cyber threat is any act, but those acts, if it is malicious, seeks to damage data, seeks to steal data, and also seek, to destroy digital life in general, all right? And how, do, individual or organization, how do they carry out this type of act? They do it in so many ways. They could launch different attack. We call that cyber attack. All right. So for you to carry out a malicious act, all right, you must weaponize, that act using different types of techniques, all right? And among them could be what we call denial of service. You don't worry about it. If some of these lingo are new to you, don't really worry about it. We're still going to come to it pretty much later. And one of the ways they could do that is what we call a denial of service attack, all right? And there's so many ways, that cyber criminal, because you see, if you carry out a malicious act against an organization or against the digital life generally, we can call you or we can consider you to be a cyber criminal. But cyber criminal, all right, weaponize their act using different techniques. And among that techniques or attack, one of them is called denial of service. All right. So let us move on. So that's cyber threat in one hand. Then we also have what we call vulnerability. A vulnerability is a weakness, all right, in an IT system that can be exploited by an attacker to deliver a successful attack, all right? So in one hand, we said that threat is anything that can cause damage, all right? And damage could be you destroy data or you steal data. And in one other hand, we said vulnerability. And we said vulnerability is a weakness in an IT system, all right, that a cyber criminal or someone that has malicious intent, can take advantage of. You must have heard this phrase as well. In this side of the world, or particularly in the West, they will say some people are vulnerable, all right? And the reason why they are vulnerable is because maybe they can't help themselves, all right? Some people, so if someone has a bad leg, sorry, pardon me that I use that example, all right? Someone has a bad leg, maybe one leg is shorter than the other, we can see if you put them if they have to run for their life, for example, if they have to run for their life, maybe someone that has, well, I think that they can run fast actually, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe someone that has, that doesn't have a bad leg, all right, or that is not on the wheelchair, they might be able to run faster, all right, than someone that is on the wheelchair. All right, so, in that case, we can say that individual, could be vulnerable, by as a result of, their situation or their circumstances at that particular time. So the same applies, for IT as well. Anytime, we consider an IT system, so that whether that IT system is a piece of laptop, whether it is a server, and whether it's something that you store digital information like a file, like a picture, like, cryptocurrency wallet, whatever that you store in that asset, in that IT system, if it does not have appropriate controls in place, all right, we can say it is vulnerable, to physical or cyber criminal, it is vulnerable to theft, all right. So vulnerability, again, is a weakness, all right, in the control of an IT system. What is an IT system? Example is your server. Example is your laptop. And you know that on our laptop and our server, we store valuable digital asset on those, all right? So, and how does vulnerability, somebody might ask me, so Wally, how does vulnerability happen? Why do we have vulnerability on our system, all right? The human factor, all right, would always cause that. So if you write a piece of code, all right, and no matter how great you are, no matter how clever you are in writing code, using different languages, because you're human, all right, your code would be prone to errors. You could have bugs in it, it could have anything which could lead, all right, to weakness, all right, in that software. So human error, usually cause, vulnerability in our IT system. I mean, think about your home. Whether you're home now, maybe you came back, you went to a party last night, like I did. I went to a 40th party birthday yesterday, and Imagine I was tired and I got home, I forgot to lock the door, that leads to the house. So it doesn't take away the fact that the door is there, which is a type of control. It's just me. I forgot to lock the door. That is the human factor. And because I did not lock my door, my house can be vulnerable, to physical theft. Somebody can open the door, or can just walk in and make away with valuable goods, in my home. So human error usually cause, vulnerability. All right. So in cybersecurity, a vulnerability, like I said, is the weakness that can be exploited by criminals. All right. So every time you hear of a breach, an attack, something bad happened to an organization, is because someone, which we call cyber criminal, has found the back door in terms of a weakness in the IT system, and they have exploited that weakness. All right. So a cyber attack, can run anything like from malicious code. They can run what we call install malware, even steal sensitive data. Vulnerability can be exploited by different method. It could be by through SQL injection. It could be through buffer overflow. It could be through cross-site scripting. There's so many ways that cyber criminal can use to exploit vulnerability in a system. Let me give you an example. Some of you drive very nice luxury cars. All right. Some people drive Jaguar Land Rover. Maybe for you, it might just be Lamborghini Bottage. Maybe for another person, it might just be Porsche Cayenne. And, you have all of those luxury cars. But you see, nowadays, we hear about all sort of attacks that happen, not physical theft, but physical theft of a car. So you went into your house, you lock your car, but yet you came out in the morning, your car is gone. How did that happen? All right, because cyber criminals all the time, they are looking for weakness in the controls that has been built into the car. Our cars are becoming more sophisticated. All right, more intelligence. As a matter of fact, gone are those days that you use your, the manual approach through which you open your car. No, most of our car now, they use a Bluetooth connection, to open the door, So, and, the weakness in Bluetooth now is cyber criminals can actually intercept the signal between your car key and also your car as well. And if they could do that, they can successfully open the car and steal the car. All right. So these are example of how they carry out, this is an example of how they actually exploit the vulnerability. So in one hand, you can identify weakness in the system. In the other hand, the cyber criminal will now find a way of exploiting that weakness. So the way of exploiting that weakness, I'm going to be teaching you pretty much later. So I want you to hold that thought, all right? So we talked about threat, we've talked about vulnerability. Now let us talk about asset, okay? So what is asset? So some of you, at some point in your career, you might just be aspiring, to go work for an organization. Again, this is one of the most common lingua, all right, that organization use. So asset is anything that is of value, all right, that is of value. Anything that you can place value on, it's an asset, all right. So I gave an example. Some of you drive luxury cars. As a matter of fact, some of these cars. So I went to a car dealer, a few days ago. And at the shop, I saw a car that I really liked, and it was going for almost like £145,000, to buy that brand new car. All right, so that's a lot of money. So that is how much that car is worth. All right, so that is the value that is placed on a physical car. All right, you see, every organization, all right, they have what is important to them. We call it asset, all right, asset. So I give this example a lot. Some of you, I believe that everybody knows Amazon, all right, I want to believe so. Everybody knows Amazon, amazon.co.uk, all right, because quite a number of people shop there. And if you're from Africa, you probably would have an e-commerce website that you use, where you also shop as well. You know Amazon, but maybe you just have, the ones that you use in your country, all right? So you see, www.amazon.co.uk is a website, isn't it? But how do you interact with Amazon? So how do you give money to Amazon? How do you purchase goods from Amazon? It's because you will go to the website, you will key in what you're looking for on the website. When you key in the keyword, it would populate it for you, and you check it, and you select from there and said, oh yeah, I want this, I want that, and you put it in your shopping basket and you make payment. All right, but you see, without the website, you probably would not be able to buy from Amazon. So it means that website to Amazon is one of the most important things, because it is the interface between you and them. That is one of their most valuable assets. If you take that website away, then how else do you buy from Amazon? None. So you understand what I'm saying now? So that is one of the most valuable assets to Amazon. So this asset, the website, is intangible. We can, as it were, feel it. All right, we can't touch it, but we can't doubt that the website is there, because we interact. We buy goods, and the next day, the goods has arrived, and you've made your payment. All right. So every organization have things that are important to them. So that's Amazon. Think about Coca-Cola. All right, Coca-Cola has been around for ages, several years, all right? But yet nobody knows their recipe, all right? Well, if you know their recipe and you start to produce something that looks like Coca-Cola, it won't be too long, they will take you to court, all right? So they have their recipe. They have a way how they, put their drink, together, all right? So you see that recipe is a type of asset, all right? If you take that recipe away, that recipe gets compromised, then there won't be Coca-Cola. All right. So every organization has something that is important to them. If you go to bank will have what we call intellectual properties. They would have business processes. If you go to Barclays, you go to HSBC, you go to Halifax, you go to all of this nationwide. All right. Every of them, they have business processes on how they conduct business, on how they sell their services to their customer. That's the reason why you will prefer Nationwide as your mortgage, as your mortgage provider over Barclays. Maybe you think that Barclays is too expensive. I think I prefer Nationwide, because Nationwide, they have a services that is backed up by business processes on how they sell those services to you. So you see, those business processes and the service itself, it's a type of asset, that is owned by each of this bank. All right. So anything that you can place a value on, we call it asset. All right. There could be logical asset. There can also be physical asset as well. The example that I've given you earlier on, the business processes, the website, those are examples of logical asset. As a matter of fact, logical asset, most times, all right, they carry more worth, all right, than physical asset. Like you can imagine, if a piece of car costs this extra amount of money. So if you value the website, if you value www.amazon.co.uk, if you place a value on it, it's mind-blowing how much that particular asset is worth. All right. So they're not looking at it from, a website. They're looking at, without this website, can we function? You see, if Amazon should take a stock of how much you generate on a day like this Saturday, it is mind-blowing. It will be going into trillions of dollars, trillions. So to place value on that asset is to ask the question, if this asset becomes unavailable, all right, how much are we going to lose? Then Jeff Bezos will tell you that, all right, this asset is worth $3 million or $3 billion. And if it becomes unavailable, we will not be able to function. As a matter of fact, our business could be out, in 2 days or in 3 days, because our website is unavailable. So that's how much the value, of that particular website. All right. So what that simply means is anything that is value to an organization, guess what? You protect it. The same way, if you find anything that is important to you, you don't just leave it, lying fallow. You make sure that you put controls in place and you protect it. So again, I've used the word control. I want you to hold that thought, because we're going to be coming back to it, pretty much later. All right, let's move on quickly. Attack surface. All right, so attack surface is the number of all possible points or attack vector where an unauthorized person, maybe a cyber criminal, can access a system or extract or steal data. All right. So again, let me take you back, to an asset. I'll give you an example of 3 assets, 1 physical one and 1 logical one. So think about your house, your home, where you live at the moment. All right. So to get into your house, you would have a door that leads into the house. And then you probably would have another that you can use to, that leads you to the garden area of your house, depending on where you're living. If you're living in a flat, maybe that would not be possible. If you're living in a house, you would have an entry door. They would have another door, maybe that would exit you to the back there, the garden area. All right. Then you would have, windows. All right. You would have windows, for each of your rooms, depending on how your house, how that house is actually, they architected. You would have windows. All right. See, if anything would come into your physical property, all right, your physical property. When I say property, I'm not talking about, the garden now. I'm talking about the house itself. All right. It will use the door. It will use either the front door, the rear door, or it would use the window. All right. So you see, each of these doors, all right, that is what we call, or you could call it, an attack surface, because it is the possible point through which an unauthorized person, authorized person can actually get into your property. Are you guys following me? I like feedback. It's just unfortunate that, you can't, talk back to me, but if you're following, you can just say yes, please. It's always good to make sure that, we know that you're following. So that is an example. All right. So, but let me now take you, logically. Okay. So if you think about Amazon again, Amazon website, assuming you want to shop today, okay, how do you shop? You will go to www.amazon.co.uk, all right, depending on where you are. All right, the website would be open. Then what do? You go to the search, isn't it? You go to the search button, you type bicycle, all right? You see the search, where you're searching, that is the entry point to that asset. So when you type that is the entry point to that asset. So if you type bicycle, or you type computer, or you type, headset, all right, what happened logically is the system will go into the database that you cannot see. It will query the database. Then it will now output that information to you. Then it will give you varieties of different bicycles, BMX and a few other ones. It will give you different, product on a headset. It will give you all of that. Is because it's gone in there to collect in that for information from the database, then it presents it to you and said, make your choice. So that is an example of an attack surface. All right. So because if anybody wanted to attack that website, all right, they can use that search engine to attack the website. Okay. So we're not going to go into how that attack will be possible. I'm just trying to explain to you what we call attack surface. All right. So what organizations do all the time is, they reduce the attack surface as much as possible. All right, they will reduce it. So if they have 200 attack surface, that is dangerous. All right, they will start to minimize it, try to close it up, and reduce it to 5. They will start to ask questions. Why do we need to have multiple windows? I remember I went to one of my friend's house and I just observed that they have many windows. So I was just like, what kind of house is this? How do you have windows? Guys are laughing. Now, when they first got here, that it was interesting. It was the same question that they asked, and because they have so many windows, it's even expensive for them. Do you guess what? Because they have to buy, curtain blinds, for all of the windows, so many windows. So, and remember the example I gave to you earlier on as well, that even the windows is an example of an attack surface into the house. All right, that is anybody that has malicious intent that wanted to gain entrance into the house, they can use the window or use the door. All right, so what do? You reduce the attack surface as much as possible. All right, how you do that, just hold that thought, because we're going to be coming back to that pretty much later. All right, so security control. What are security control? Security control are perimeters, sometimes we call it perimeters, implemented, all right, by someone like yourself when you're hired, to protect various forms of data or infrastructure important to an organization. All right. You remember I said earlier on that attack surface. All right. So the moment you attack, the moment you identify Every point where somebody can attack you, guess what? You go and block that place now. Sorry, I use my pidgin English. You block the place. You put something to block that place, so that something will not be able to come through, that particular opening. When you do that, guess what you're doing? You're putting control in place. So someone, a cybersecurity analyst, or whatever title that you assume, or that the job that you take, every time what you're doing is you're identifying the attack surface. You are putting security controls in place to protect that opening, so that unauthorized individual will not be able to access your environment, all right, or not be able to access your work. All right, so still hold that thought. Third party. All right, so then what is now third party? So third party risk, let me first talk about third party risk. So third party risk is a potential threat presented to an organization employee or customer data, financial information and operation from organizations supplier chain and other outside party. All right, somebody might be wondering, so what is this supplier chain? Some of you are aware of it. You're already familiar with supply chain. Maybe you work in a place, and by reason of what you do, let's say you work in Tesco, for example, or you work, in Cado, or you work in Sainsbury. Let's say you work in some of those places. All right. So if you do work for them, and you are responsible for the shop floor. All right. If you go there, you see various products. All right. Do you think Tesco is the one that holds all of those? Tesco is just a brand. What Tesco is just doing is collecting all the products from so many companies, put it in their store, and they're selling it. Okay. Okay. So, but you see, each of these goods, they are supplied by different organizations, all right, or different businesses. Or as a matter of fact, if you work with Tesco, late in the night, that's when, all of the heavy duty lorries, they are moving, to the storehouse where they collect all of this information, get to the Tesco shop, and people are just taking them, they're stuffing it into the shelf. All right. So, but they will come from different suppliers. All right. They will come from different suppliers. Okay. So Tesco depend, all right, on each of these suppliers, to be able to sell the product. All right, that we even buy from them. As a matter of fact, some of these products or goods, they come as far as some places in Europe, even some places in America or Africa. Okay, so you can see that there is a supply chain. They kind of just depend on each other. But you remember during Brexit, if people that are that live in this country during Brexit, there were so many speculations. They were like, oh, at some point, we will not be able to, I can't give specific example now. They said even the cotton board that children use, or we use, to clean our hair, that, we will not even be able to get it. It's because, with this Brexit, some company that produce, they are far away in Europe, they will not be able to supply because of, the logistics, and the cost, of course, if the logistic is complex, then the cost will skyrocket. They wouldn't be able, to sell this product to us anymore. All right. So what they're exactly saying then, they were talking about the risk. Somebody was trying to articulate the third-party risk, what Brexit, could possibly, cause, for us, as a citizen of this country, because we're going outside of EU. So every organization, if you think about Barclays, if you think about HSBC, if you think about BNP Paribas, if you think about all the big brands, all right, every one of them consumes services from other organizations. Those organizations where they consume those services, we can liken them to vendors, supplier, or third party. And because they depend on them, to sell them those services, you would agree with me that it would also come with risk as well. So that is third party risk. All right. So third party risk is any risk that is brought onto an organization by external parties. So it is not in your organization now, it is coming. Tune, can you hear me? My internet is playing up. All right. I believe so. All right, so it's coming from an external party, within a particular ecosystem or what we call suppliers chain. So such parties may include vendor, supplier, partners, contractors, even service provider, would have access to internal company or company data, system, and also processes as well. All right, so because you depend on them to provide you services, there is the possibility that there would be risk. And that risk could also be, I'm going to be talking about those risks pretty much later. Just hold that thought that there is risk because you depend on them. Then we also have what we call, the due diligence. So what is a due diligence? Because now that you need a supplier, you depend on them, you need them and you depend on them to provide you a type of service. Then due diligence, you have the responsibility to carry out due diligence against them. So what is due diligence, or what we call vendor due diligence, is a comprehensive security screening of a potential supplier, a vendor, before performing a partnership. All right, so before you would engage, in dealing with, someone that wanted to supply you a service or supply you with a product, okay, you would first carry out a due diligence against them. All right, before you can now say, all right, I feel comfortable, we can start to do business. All right, most organizations, they do that. We're still going to be coming back into what that is, even in more details, pretty much later. So let me take the next one, which is assessment. There's something we also call the third-party assessment as well. So this is also sometimes referred to in a third-party risk assessment. It's an in-depth kind of examination of the vendor relationship. All right. So before you give your money to someone, or before you engage them in a service, you want to do a thorough vetting for them. You want to make sure that they are who they say they are. They are competent and they will do the job that you have agreed with them. So you do all sort of vetting. We do it in our life as well. So for example, if you want to engage the services of maybe a fashion designer, and maybe you can go to your friend and say, oh, have you heard about a particular brand? Have you worked with them before? And your friend can say, yeah, I know them, they did, So what you're essentially doing is, you're carrying out the due diligence against that particular brand, before you engage their services. And, if it happens that, all the information that you gathered, is good, then you can go ahead and engage them. All right. But it's much more, the complexity and the depth of that assessment is much more deeper than what I've just said now. So if you're working as a third-party risk analyst in an organization, you even go beyond what I've just said. But we're going to be going into the details pretty much later. Then let me now take you the last two keywords is inerrant risk and also what we call residual risk. So inerrant risk is the inherent probability that cybersecurity event may occur as a result of lack of controls. So if you do not have controls in place, then you can have an inherent risk. I want you to listen to me carefully, all right, because this is very, very important. These are examples of interview questions, all right. Residual risk, on the other hand, is what remains after a risk has been mitigated. All right, so let me explain this to you. So for example, I want you to think about your computer system. I don't know where you're connected, I don't know how you are connected, but think about the computer system in your house, at your home at the moment. All right, so if you think about your computer system, if your computer system does not have antivirus on it, let's say there's no antivirus on it, okay? At the moment, it's not installed. All right, so you see, you have created a high inherent risk, all right, because there is no antivirus on your computer. So the inherent risk is high because you don't have controls in place. Okay, so I don't want to use this example, but let's say COVID, all right, let's say COVID vaccine, all right, let's say you didn't take the vaccine, all right, you didn't take the vaccination because maybe you don't just take it for some reason. You see, the risk of you maybe contacting, the virus, maybe is high. So that's an example, of an inherent risk because you do not have you have not been vaccinated, you have increased, the chances of you, having, that virus, okay? But you see, if you have the vaccination, even the vaccination, they say that it is not bulletproof, meaning that it doesn't stop the virus, all right? That's a little bit confusing anyway, but let's say you have that vaccination, all right? But because you have that vaccination, you have reduced the chances of catching that virus, okay? So whatever that you are, when you apply a control, to your computer by putting an antivirus, by installing an antivirus, the inherent risk, you have reduced it as much as possible. And what is left is what we call the residual risk. In cybersecurity, there's something we said we cannot completely eliminate risk. And that's true. Even in life, you can't completely get away with your risk. But every time that you put controls in place, guess what you're doing? You are reducing the risk as much as possible. The reason why we buy insurance on our car is because, it's because for ourselves, but more importantly as well, because of other people. All right, that's the reason why we buy insurance. All right, so but because you have insurance on your car, it doesn't stop you from having a car accident. All right, you can be careful as a person, but you can just come across one stupid person, sorry I used that word, but someone that something is not just right with them, they run into your car, and you just be wondering, oh my goodness, I'm a very, very good driver, I am careful, how come I have an accident? But you see, if you have that accident, all right, so the insurance itself is there, to reduce, to reduce your risk of having to pay, a lot of money, if you had fought in a car accident. But it doesn't eliminate, or it doesn't mean that you can't have an accident. You could have an accident. So if you do, then guess what? If you don't have an insurance, your risk is high. But if you have an insurance, then you have reduced the risk as much as possible. What are the risks that you have reduced? You have reduced the risk of what you would have to pay, to another person. It may be, that if that accident happened, then maybe somebody, from the insurance, they would assess the situation and they can decide to pay out. All right, maybe pay out to, the other party. All right. So whatever that is left is what we call residual risk, because you can still have that an accident, but whatever that is left after that you have applied your control is what we call residual risk. So I want you to note that, because I'm going to be talking about it, pretty much later in the training. All right. So introduction. So the term cybersecurity is used to refer to the security offered through online service to protect your online information or digital asset. I've used the word digital asset over and over and again. So digital asset is anything that is stored digitally or that is uniquely identified that an organization can use to realize value. All right, what is a digital asset? Pictures, photos, video, digital design, Word document, digital currency. That's where the word is going, all right? So the cryptocurrency, that's an example of a digital asset. So cybersecurity essentially is meant to protect our information or anything that we consider that is a digital asset, but that's got a lot of value associated with it. All right. But with the increasing amount of people and businesses getting connected to the internet, the security threat that causes malicious harm are also increasing as well. So you can look at us today. See, we're connected from everywhere. You are connected from Africa. I'm here in the UK. Some people are connected from Europe, and a few others are connected from everywhere. All right. So because of this interconnection, that has increased, what we call the security threat. All right. So that's why, somebody can be here, they can hack another system somewhere, in Africa. Another person can be in Asia and they can hack another system somewhere in Europe. That interconnection has also brought about a lot of risk. And that is why you and I, we're in business, because if there are no risks to internet, then nobody would employ us. You know what I mean? So the more the interconnection, the higher the risk, and the more the need for someone that's got this type of knowledge so that they can be employed. All right, let's now talk about common type of cybersecurity attack. You remember earlier on, I was talking about attack surface. I said they are the possible entry point to a particular digital asset. I gave an example. And I said that for every time there is an attack surface, there's also a vulnerability. And we're talking about if there is a vulnerability, which is a weakness in the system, then how do cyber criminals, how do they exploit these weaknesses? These are examples of the how. All right. So we call these common types of cybersecurity attack. So because of our time, I'm just going to take a few. So you can see one, malware, or sometimes you hear the word ransomware, phishing, man-in-the-middle attack, denial of service attack, SQL injection, zero-day exploit attack, advanced persistent threat. We also have the password attack. We have the cross-site scripting. So it's important for you to know here that there's so many types of attack, all right? I've just only listed a few. So what is, in no particular order, so what is denial of service attack? All right. So a denial of service attack is designed to overwhelm the resources of a system to the point where that system is unable, to reply to legitimate service requests. What do I mean by this? Take, for example, some of you must have heard something. They will say this website is slow. Have you heard about that? The website is slow. I can't get anywhere. It's slow. I'm trying to input something, but it's slow. Some of us has experienced that, when we're using the internet. As a matter of fact, when website is slow, sometimes it could be as a result of so many things. It could be as a result that maybe, the resource, when I say resource, or the compute of the server, maybe the compute, that's how, including the CPU, the RAM, and a few other things, maybe they don't have a high compute. All right. So, and the problem with that is if the compute are not as high, all right, maybe the RAM or the CPU and the storage space, is minimal, then when you're making a request, to that particular web server, it might be slow. All right. But that might not be the case. All right. Other things that could also cause it, could be, malicious attack, like what we call the denial of attack. All right. Let me give you an example. I use this example a lot, and please listen to me carefully. It's very, very important. So I want you to imagine, let me just pick up one name here randomly. Let's say Paul. Let's say Paul, for example. Paul, you are in the midst, I use this example a lot because it just makes a whole lot of sense. Let's say, Paul, you are in the midst of 500,000 people. All right, 500,000. Imagine a massive crowd. All right, maybe a riot is going on. Massive crowd, or maybe you went to a concert, and you're in the midst of over 500,000 people. All right, I'm trying to explain denial of service attack. And you see, Paul, if you are the only person that bears Paul, in that congregation of people, and somebody called your name. All right. You see, somebody called me. You could probably just turn back and say, "Oh, I heard my name. Oh, Paul." And chances that you would answer. Okay, you will say, "Hey, yeah, what's up?" That kind of, the way our mates will call us. I say, "Hey, what's up?" And you will answer them. All right. So someone, just one person. All right. If 100 people call you, Paul, at the same time, I'm saying using the word same time. All right. You see, because the way I define denial of service attack earlier on, I said. He said the attack is designed to overwhelm the resource. All right. So, Paul, I want you to think about yourself as a type of resource. All right. Overwhelm, designed to overwhelm the resource of the system to the point where it is unable to reply to legitimate service requests. So, if 200 people or 500 people or 1,000 people is calling you at the same time, Paul, you would find it difficult to reply or to respond to every one of them at the same time. All right. This is an example. This is how, denial of service actually work. You see, if you think about Amazon website, all right, Amazon website, for example, if you think about it, you can imagine that website now, wherever it is, everybody could be connected from their home and they're making a request to the server. They wanted to buy something, all right? Somebody want to buy a bicycle, others want to buy an iPhone, others want to buy a laptop, somebody want to buy a water bottle, somebody want to buy a laptop. Everybody making a request at the same time, simultaneously, all right, to that server. The server would have to respond to the request, their legitimate request. It will respond. When you type in, you query it, it will say, oh, this is your bicycle, this is your this is your this is your this. But you see, denial of service attack is such that you are sending illegitimate requests to the server randomly from everywhere, all right, until the server is overwhelmed and it is not able to respond to legitimate requests. So if that happens, then that is called denial of service attack. All right, the same way that almost like 1,000 people is trying to call Paul's name at the same time. Paul, you'll be overwhelmed. You probably will not be able to service all of those requests because it's too much. In fact, you could close your head this way and go this way. Oh my goodness, I can't take it anymore. All right. So that's exactly what happens to some servers sometimes, where, cyber criminals, they will keep sending fake requests, illegitimate requests, we call it, to the server, such that it would overpower the server resource, to respond to all of those requests at the same time. All right, so this is an example of what a cyber criminal would do, to take a particular website down. But you see, you will now be employed, all right, to understand what SQL, to understand what DDoS is, so that, through you, your organization will start to put controls in place, to ensure that a DDoS, that a DOS or a DDoS attack does not happen. All right, in the training, this is what we're going to be teaching you, how to become a cybersecurity analyst, such that you will learn enough how to put controls in place, to protect the organization from this type of attack. Let me take one more attack so that we can move quickly. The next one I'm going to take, in no particular order, is what we call man in the middle attack. All right, so in cybersecurity, it is I said here that man in the middle attack refers to breach in cybersecurity that makes it possible for an attacker to eavesdrop, all right, on a data sent back and forth between two people, between a network, and also between a fourth person. So let me give you an example. So you can imagine the Ukraine war, what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. All right, the president of Ukraine would be having, some very, sensitive, would be having a conversation with Joe Biden. All right, and all of that presidents, or prime minister of different countries, they will be sharing sensitive information, strategy. The president of Ukraine is going to be saying, "Oh, so we're going to send you all of this." Some information they would tell it, they will put it in the public. Like when America said, "Oh, we're going to support them with X, Y, and Z." Yeah, they said they're going to support them, but they didn't tell us how those weapons is going to be shipped. All right, to Ukraine. They didn't tell us. So those are very, very sensitive information, all right, that the public doesn't need to know, particularly Russia. All right, those will be shared, maybe over the phone or through some form of communication that would be encrypted, so that the integrity and the confidentiality of that information is protected from cyber criminal, particularly from Russia and anyone that has a malicious intent. All right, the same in your organization as well. Like, for example, remember, what happened between Twitter and Elon Musk. Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter. Well, they're still on it anyway. But you see, before they make that public, there has been a whole lot of conversation that's been going on, about the possibility of buying it. All right, and it's looking more likely that that deal is going to fall apart. Now, and Twitter is threatening that they're going to take Elon Musk, to court. You know what I mean? But you see, when all of that were going on in the background, all right, you have to protect such information. The same way the organization that you're going to be working for, they have trade secrets, they have confidential information, their pen test report, their vulnerability management report. Those have to be kept secret. You don't want, a man in the middle attack. You don't want someone to eavesdrop into sensitive information, all right, whereby they can steal it as well. All right. And, this sensitive information could be anything. It could be intellectual property. It could be design. It could be trade secrets. It could be business processes. Just as earlier on, I was teaching you about, information asset or asset that an organization have. All right. So you have to protect all of those assets, from man in the middle attack. But you see, this is where, you would come in. Someone have to employ you, to understand, this man in the middle attack, what it is, how cyber criminal, will exploit vulnerability in your organization asset, to eavesdrop into a conversation, or to steal valuable information. So once you understand that, then you now start to put measures in place, which is a type of security control, to protect your organization from man in the middle, from such that man in the middle attack does not happen. All right, I think we have to move on quickly. So we have all other attack as well. All right, so we've been talking about this attack. Then how, do you protect, your organization from all of that attack? This is where, cybersecurity is needed. All right, you put controls in place. I've been talking about controls earlier on. You put controls in place, or what we call safeguard, all right, to protect those assets. And there are different types of control. All right, so we have what we call the physical control. We have the technical control. We also have what we call the administrative control. So physical, no brainer. This describes anything tangible, anything that you can see. Your door, the door that leads to your house, is a physical control. The gate that leads, to your workspace is a physical control. Your CCTV camera, your barbed wire, your CCTV camera, your barbed wire, your surveillance, your camera, your motion sensor, your fire suppression, anything that is tangible, that serves as a deterrent, from cyber criminals. Those are examples of physical control. All right. So if you have ever worked in a data center, if you go to a data center, for example, now they have different types of layers of physical control. As a matter of fact, when you walk into a data center, they would ask you to fill a form. You will put your name, your first name and your last name and your telephone number, and where you have come from, maybe the organization that you work for. All right, they will ask series of questions. There will be a man guard at the data center, asking you questions. They will walk you through the data center. You will go through multiple gates before you get, maybe into, the room where you're going. So different type of physical control. Then we have what we call the technical controls. These are also known as logical controls. So technical controls, a lot of times we cannot see it. We cannot touch it, but we can't deny the impact. All right. So the logical control could be hardware, it could be software mechanism used to protect an asset, anything that's of vault. Some common example could be your antivirus, it could be your firewall, it could be your intrusion detection system, it could be your intrusion prevention system, it could be your password, the password that you use. These are examples of all technical controls. I'm giving you just an example, but don't worry if you don't, know everything now. Don't worry. That's part of, we're going to be having a proper formal training where we're going to be teaching you what it is. All right. Then lastly, we have, administrative control. Administrative control refers to your policy, it refers to procedure, it refers to some sort of guideline that define the personnel or the business practices in accordance with the organization security goal. So you remember, the moment you join an organization, you want to work for them. First thing first, they will ask you, to read their policy. You will go through all of those policies. In fact, when you read and understood it, you would append your signature, all right? To say, yes, I've read and understood this policy and I would abide by them. That is an example of an administrative policy. But you see, one thing about administrative policy is, administrative policy drives in cybersecurity. It also drives our technical control. Sorry, administrative control drives our technical control and also our physical control. As a matter of fact, what you want your firewall to do, your IDS and IPSs, what you want your password to do, your password length, the character and everything, how you want your password to be put together, you will first define them in a policy. You define them in a policy, then that policy is what your technical team will go out, take away and start to configure the firewall to reflect what you have in the policy. All right. So if you think about this, the administrative control, which are set of policies, procedures, and guidelines, will sit up here where you would have, will sit up then, where you now have your technical control and also your physical control, underneath, because, the administrative control kind of provide direction for what you do, with your physical control and technical control. All right, let's move on quickly. This, what you see here, just very easy. So I've been talking about these three: administrative, technical, all right. So you could see here, you could look at it across different functions: preventive, dictative and corrective. All right. So anytime that you are implementing any control, all right, those control can either be serving as a preventative measures, or it could be serving as a dictative measures, or it could be serving as a corrective measures. So for example, now, when it's a physical, your fence, your gate, the lock that you use on your door, all right, that is preventive. It's actually preventing bad people from coming into your house, all right? But you would agree with me that CCTV and surveillance and camera logs and all of that, that is an example of a dictative. So, and that's right, the thing is, if anybody wanted to commit anything bad now, the moment they see the CCTV camera, they will kind of just adjust themselves. All right, corrective is a physical, repair physical damage, reissue an access card. That's an example of a corrective control. Then we have technical. We have your firewall, we have your IPS and IDSs, MFA, which is the multi-factor authentication, your two-factor authentication, what you know and what you have, antivirus on your laptop, patch vulnerable systems. Those are examples of preventive, all right? Then we also have detective here, IDS, which is your intrusion detection system, honeypot, and also antivirus as well. That falls under detective. Then we have, under corrective here, we have patch system, terminate a process, reboot a system, quarantine a virus. So corrective is, if you do not have, bear with me, please. Apologies for that. Somebody was at the door. All right. So then patch systems. So patch system is if you have your laptop and you have not updated it with a new patch, then that will serve under corrective control. Because if you do not apply the right patch, listen, you can have a virus on your laptop. So you don't want that. So anytime you patch your system, you're actually correcting the missing patch, because the patches were not there, then you're not correcting it, with this one. In fact, you would agree with me that sometimes your laptop is slow, you reboot it. When you reboot your system, you're trying to correct maybe, or you're trying to terminate a process, that has made your laptop to hang for a while, hence you're rebooting it. Then we have the administrative, when you hiring and terminating policies, separation of duty, data classification. All right, those are examples of preventive control as well. So like I said, the real training is where we teach you all of this. We'll show you how to write policies, we'll tell you different types of policies and how you can write one as well. Then we have review access, write audit log, and authorize changes as well. So when you think about dictative control, the reason why you call, all the time you're reviewing access is because they have given access to an unauthorized person, and if you go back to the list and you look at it again, you can remove that access or reissue a new access. So that's an example of a dictative control. And lastly, we have here implement a business continuity plan or incident response control. So business continuity plan is very easy. So if there were to be any disaster whatsoever, we don't pray for that. Something bad happen. The reason why we put measures in place is such that the business can bounce back is because we have a DR, which we call the disaster recovery plan. So that's why in some household, I give this example a lot. In some household, you notice that some people have 2 cars. All right, two cars in the sense that maybe they feel that if one becomes unavailable for any reason, they would be able to just get in the other one and get on with the business of the day. So once you have that in place, that is an example of a backup, which can also serve as a corrective control as well. All right. Let's move on quickly. All right. So you see, we've been talking about all of these possibilities. We've talked about different types of terminologies. We've talked about different types of terminologies. We've talked about attack surface. We've talked about common type of attack. All right. And so the question is, how do organizations then protect what is important to them? How do they protect their asset? And we said earlier on that they protect it by making sure that they put controls in place. First, you have to first identify what is wrong. Then you now start to put measures in place to protect it. Okay, so if that is going to happen, most organizations, they will go into the marketplace. They will start to employ people, and they would employ different roles, because you see, cybersecurity is so wide that people play different roles, still under the same cybersecurity umbrella. All right, it's cybersecurity, but people are playing different roles. So for me today, what I intend to show you in the next couple of minutes is I wanted to show you different roles that are possible within cybersecurity. So the list is, to be honest, I can't exhaust the list because it's so much, but I've picked a few that I'm going to be talking about. So with our training, we would help you to become one of these or all of this where it is possible. So you could go in there, to become a cybersecurity assurance lead. All right, you could work within that space. You become a cybersecurity analyst. You could become a pen tester. You could become a third-party risk analyst. You could go into vulnerability management. You could go into information security, governance, risk, and compliance, or you could also become a SOC analyst as well. So let me just give you an example. So a cybersecurity analyst, would help to protect an organization by employing a range of technologies and processes to prevent, to detect, and also to manage cyber threats. So this individual must have knowledge of technology. All right, they must have knowledge of different technology, and their aim, the purpose is such that they will protect the organization. They will be able to detect, all right, any abnormality on the network, and they would monitor the network. They would also protect the network as well, from cyber, threat. It's different from a pen tester. A pen tester, which is penetration testing, is this person that will simulate a cybersecurity attack against, the organization computer asset. They're always checking if there are any vulnerability in the organization asset, and always checking to see that whether they can actually exploit that vulnerability, before, cyber criminal, take advantage of the weakness. So that is one of the remit of the job that they do. This individual must have knowledge of so many technology. They would be able to script, they will be able to use different tooling, languages, they will be able to, they would understand the dynamics, the entire OSI layer, OSI model layer. They would understand how network kind of interoperate, or they're interconnected. They will be able to, like I said, carry out a simulated attack against the organization asset. So that's what a pen tester would do. All right, a vulnerability management specialist under this one. This individual, would also, have knowledge of technology as well. They are constantly, carrying out a vulnerability scan against the network of that organization, using different toolings, all right, to identify vulnerability, all right, and to ensure that once those vulnerabilities are identified, they're working with the organization, to make sure that controls are put in place to mitigate those vulnerabilities as much as possible. Remember what I said earlier on, that you see those weaknesses, if you do not address them, the cyber criminals, will go there and take advantage of it. For example, if you have a missing patch, all right, on your asset, on your laptop and you do not, identify those missing patch, and you do not also, put measures in place to, you do not put measures in place to apply patches to that server, then chances are, all right, if you don't do that, then cyber criminal, will go there, they will take advantage and they can steal valuable digital asset from your organization. Then lastly, we have, the third-party risk management. So again, an organization can employ someone who is a third-party risk analyst. And mainly their role is to identify, to assess, to mitigate, to monitor, and also to report on third-party risk. All right, so this individual constantly is working with different people in the team, identifying, all of the suppliers or vendors, making sure that due diligence is carried out, identifying all of the third-party risk, and working with the vendor to make sure that those risks are mitigated. All right, so for an organization, to put controls in place and ensure that they are at every point in time, they are reducing the risk of their organization as much as possible, they have to employ one or two or the entire, this role within their cybersecurity regime to ensure that the organization is fully protected. So you see, each of those individuals, they are playing different roles, or they would be playing different roles in an organization. All right, let's move quickly. Introduction to third-party risk management. So you can see here that I've already showed you the role, okay? But today, for the purpose of this training, I'm just going to be narrowing in on third-party risk management. All right, so let's talk about the introduction. So it's important that you know that working with third party is essential, for getting business done in this day and age. All right, you would agree with me. I give an example of Tesco. You see, Tesco is a brand, but Tesco sells many products. All right, so if you think about BNP Paribas, BNP Paribas is an asset management. And as a matter of fact, you will give them their money, all right, or you give them your asset. They will protect that asset for you. And they will make sure that that asset does not reduce in value. It's always increasing in value. But you see, as BNP Paribas is, they are constantly working, all right, with different organizations, all right, consuming their services and buying their services. All right. So in other words, what I'm saying here is, you see, third-party vendor is essential, all right, for getting business done in this day and age. But allowing outsider, your vendor, your supplier, to have access, to your system or your data, usually will increase, your organization enterprise vulnerability. So, for example, if BNP Paribas is going to go work with another organization, to provide services for them. Let's say they are outsourcing their HR service, to a different organization. Then it means that the company that is providing the HR service would have to have access to BNP Paribas, system. They would have to have access to their, their employee data. All right. And when those data are stored, you have to give them access to it. So because they're an outsider, all right, to BNP Paribas, all right, they can pose a lot of risk or threat to BNP Paribas, all right? So while, working with the vendor is necessary, is a necessary evil. You can't do anything without it. But I'm also saying that, it comes with a lot of risk, all right? Just bear with me. So it also comes with a lot of risk, okay? So, and this risk could come in various forms: enterprise vulnerability, failure by supply chain or partner, which could also result into significant destruction in the bottom line. And what do I mean by this? It could result into financial, legal, and reputational risk. And this can be quite severe on the organization, such as BNP Paribas. So that is why third-party risk management is a very, very critical function in every organization. All right. So because more than ever, risk come in different ways. Like I said, it could be financial risk as a result of failure of the supplier. It could come as a result of reputational risk. It could come in form of operational risk. There's so many risks that a typical supplier can introduce into the business because of maybe negligence, compliance issue, or even sometimes security issue. So that is why it is very, very important before you engage a supplier, what an organization would do is to carry out what we call due diligence. All right, due diligence. So for the purpose of the training today, my focus would be more on due diligence. I'm not going to be covering the entire vulnerability management, the entire third-party risk management. I'm not going to be covering that in all its entirety. I'll be focusing on due diligence aspect of it. All right. Okay, so you heard me earlier on when I was talking about regulatory risk, okay, that can come as a result of failure from the supplier. All right, so the regulatory landscape here, it says here, and this is from Accenture, it says regulators are clear that organizations are responsible for services provided by third party as if it were provided in-house. All right, so if BNP Paribas loses money as a result of the services that they have outsourced, to their supplier, all right, to the regulator, it is BNP Paribas' headache. All right, it's not the supplier. All right, so that is why every organization that is engaging the services of a supplier, they will carry out due diligence. They would ensure, because you can't transfer the risk, you know what I mean? They would ensure, that things are done properly, by the supplier that they are engaging. So if you look at, for example, now EU GDPR, you look at the US regulation. So EU GDPR says here the controller, which can be the company, shall be responsible for and will be able to demonstrate compliance with paragraph 1. Then he went on and went on. And it says the EU GDPR make organizational controller accountable, for data breaches caused by a third-party service provider. So it is clear in the regulation. So if anything happens, to BNP Paribas as a result of, their engagement, with a service provider, then the regulator is BNP Paribas. It is not, this supplier. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is just to let you know that, government takes seriously, third-party risk management. And that's why, most organizations as well, they take it equally, serious as well, making sure that they're employing third-party risk analysts all the time to help them to mitigate this risk as much as possible. All right, so look at some of the cost of failure that can be high. So these are all in the news. These are just examples. So FCA fined RBS, NatWest, and also Ulster Bank Limited 42 million for IT failure. All right. The next one, Thomas Cook boss apologized to family over Kofu debt. All right. Then Universal Music Group, 2003 target data breaches. So there's so many breaches that's happened in the last couple of years. All right. And these are negligence, from, the supplier. All right. But again, they don't hold the supplier responsible when it comes to regulation. They usually hold, the company that's engaging them responsible. So you can see how serious this is. And what this also tells us is this serious? And what that simply means is if government is taking it serious, then most organizations that are engaging supplier would also equally take it serious as well. And what do I mean by that? They will constantly carry out due diligence. They would engage the supplier. They would make sure, that the supplier is doing the right thing. All right, I'll flip this slide because I have a better slide here. All right, so we've talked about this definition earlier on. So you can see here, third party, any business arrangement between an organization, an entity, contract, or otherwise. Third-party risk management, the function responsible for identifying. So when you carry out third-party risk management, all right, you are identifying, you are managing, you are monitoring risk associated with third party, and you're providing, competent oversight of this relationship. This enables the identification and also the engagement of third-party service provider who can meet the need of your organization based on requirements set out in your contract. All right, so you can see the word contract there. We're going to come back to that later. So you see, if you are trained to become a third-party risk analyst, all right, these and many things is what you would have to learn. So for example, our training that is coming forth, which is going to be happening on the 30th of this month, covers all of this area, even in much more details. All right. There are a few things that I'm showing you today, but trust me, like I said, this is a solid 5 days training that will cover it in much more details. And if there's anybody that's interested in the actual training itself, please by all means reach out to us. All right. Then we have lastly there, third-party risk stratification. So the process of rating and ranking the services provided to an organization by a third party based on risk inherent. I want you to note the word here, inherent to the services. So operational, strategic, compliance, credit, and also reputational risk. Okay. So these are some of the definition that you will come across on that third party risk management. All right. I'll move this one quickly. So I thought that this is very, very important, okay? So if you get employed, all right, as a third-party risk analyst, all right, you're going to be working with different people, all right? So these are stakeholders that you will find in CPRM, all right? You're going to be working with the procurement team, the contract owner, the supplier relationship manager, the legal team, the cybersecurity assurance team, the third-party risk analyst, okay? These are all the people. So you would be here, all right? Or you could be working within this business function, all right? But every other team that you're going to be working with, mainly the procurement team. The procurement team, they interface directly, okay, with the supplier, all right? When you're onboarding new supplier, it is the procurement team that actually goes first, all right? So they manage the vendor due diligence process as part of their ongoing supplier relationship manager. So the procurement team, for example, they would engage the vendor, contract, internal stakeholder. They would determine which internal stakeholder must be involved. They would provide a kind of overview of the vendor service. They would define information on application the vendor would access, and they would do a whole lot. All right, they're in the front, all right, of the relationship with the supplier. All right, so from the time, so if I give you an example, if you take Paul, if Paul is a CISO, and Paul have decided that in their organization they wanted to engage the service of a company called Dell Secure Work, all right? And Paul, assigned a task maybe to Timothy and said, Timothy, get these people because we have a need in this area, and we want to engage their services. So Paul can have an initial conversation with that organization, but when it comes to the time where the services will be purchased, and other stuff would be done, then Paul, by company policy, would get procurement team involved, all right? The procurement team would take it from there. They will now start to liaise, all right, with their secure work, try to understand the services that they provide, where they are, their location, and all of that. So procurement team will facilitate that process to the point, that supplier is onboarded to that organization. So the point I'm trying to make here is, for some of you that you're going to be interviewing, you should understand that when you are engaging, for some of you that's going to be interviewing, you should understand that, our procurement team plays a very, very important role when it comes to the TPRM, entire process. Then we also have what we call the contract owners, all right? I'm not really going to bore you with each of this because it varies across so many organizations, all right? Big organization, they have layers of approach. So while they have procurement, they would also have some people that holds the contract, all right? They have, what we call the segregation of duty. Someone would own that contract, all right? It could be someone senior in the business. So because you work in the procurement team, you may not necessarily own the contract. Someone else will own the contract. Then you also have what we call the supplier relationship manager. It might be someone, again, within the business that would, hold the relationship, all right, between their company and the supplier, all right? So they would ensure that every services that has been clearly, stated in the contract is being fulfilled by the supplier, all right? They would hold that relationship. So they will be the go-to person between their organization and the supplier. Then we have legal. Remember, we're talking about contract. Every time you want to consume a service or you wanted to consume a service, legal will be involved. There will be contract that would be exchanged between the organization and the supplier company as well. Then we have the cybersecurity assurance team and also the third-party risk analyst. Within the cybersecurity assurance team, there might be different people playing different roles within it, all right? Maybe for some organization, for example, now, before you consume their service, you might need that you carry out a pen test against their services or against their product. You might need that someone carry out a vulnerability scan against their services or their product. A third-party risk analyst will be that person that would be responsible for carrying out the due diligence. All right, I'm going to be talking to you about that one pretty much soon. It will be carrying out that due diligence. So you see the stakeholders, it varies from one organization to another. All right, kind of varied, but everywhere you go, you would find 1, 2, or 3 of these entities, within your TPRM process. All right. Procurement, that's very important. You would always find them there. Contract owner, you might not have a contract owner, but it's ideal to have one. All right. Supplier relationship manager, I would also recommend that. Legal, of course, you want to just like because you have to sign a contract. Then a third-party risk analyst as well. All right. We're almost coming to the end. I will be quick on this one. The plan is I don't intend to show you everything here because it's a lot. But when you come for the actual training itself, we can explain, go into details what each of those things means. But if you think about this, supplier, life cycle, all right, you can see here, it kind of go from here all the way back, all right? It says here evaluation, risk rating, and also due diligence. This is where I really wanted to focus on in the next few minutes. Now you can see here RFP and contract. You can see here monitoring, continuous and ongoing, monitoring, continuous and ongoing, remediation, and also termination as well. But my focus, like I said, is pretty much around risk rating and also due diligence. All right. So when you are engaging or when you're about to engage a supplier, all right, there's certain things that you will do first, okay? And there's something we call initial, some people will call it inerrant risk assessment, or some people will call it, in some organizations, they will call it initial risk assessment. Remember earlier on, I explained to you what inerrant is, and also said to you what residual risk is. I said inerrant just means that, a control has not been applied. All right, at all. And we said when you do not apply a control, chances that your inerrant risk will be like this. It will be high. All right. But when you apply control, we're not saying that the control will completely eliminate the risk. It would reduce the risk, to a large extent. And what is left is what we call the residual risk. Okay. So at the early stage of any contract, or when you are involving a supplier, first thing first is you will carry out the initial, all right, due diligence or initial risk assessment. And the purpose of that risk assessment is so that you can ascertain the inerrant risk of that particular supplier. All right, it's so that you can determine the inerrant risk of that particular supplier. And when you have done that, what usually follow is now the full due diligence. All right, I want you to know that. My plan is I don't intend to explain all of this, to be honest, because in the actual training, each of this would be even further explained. All right. let me just quickly touch on this one, which we call monitoring. You can see that the cycle flow from here and it gets here. You see, before you start to monitor your supplier, you must have offered them the contract. All right, contract must have been offered first before you start to do monitoring. And you can see here we call it continuous and also ongoing monitoring. If I take you back to what the government says here, look at what the government says. It says regulators are clear that organizations are responsible, all right, for services provided by third party as if it were provided in-house. They are clear about it. So for that reason, if you are engaging a supplier for 2 years, all right, if they're going to be providing services for you for 2 years, then you have the responsibility to continually, all right, monitor, the risk that you have identified for that particular supplier. That continual monitoring, we're going to teach you that, in the main training itself. All right, so we said the life cycle. If you are engaging a supplier for 2 years, after that 2 years, you will terminate the contract, isn't it? All right, this is where remediation or termination also comes in as well. And remediation just simply means that every time you are carrying out a continuous monitoring against your supplier, either by carrying out a risk assessment against them, or you visit their site to carry out on-site visit. Every time you identify anything that is not right, all right, you would call the relationship manager and you start to work with them to carry out remediation. But at the end of that contract, you will terminate the contract. So I will leave it at this very high level because we have to come back to that in the main training. All right. So if I take you back here, we've been talking about due diligence. And I said here that the first thing first that you need to do before you carry out your due diligence is you have to carry out what we call initial risk assessment. And when you're carrying out your initial risk assessment, you want to be able to determine what we call the inherent risk, all right? So here, if you look at this illustration, he said illustrative view of risk assessment for a standard TRM process. And he went on, he said, risk assessment determine which category applicable to the third-party service on a risk-based approach. Assess their risk category at the services or the entity level, all right? So it could be on the service level, also on the entity level. But first thing first, he said the business owner requesting the third-party service fill out the inherent risk questionnaire to determine which risk category are applicable and the overall inherent risk. So the first thing first is identify the inherent risk. And how do you do that? You will send a questionnaire to the company that you intended to do business with. They will fill in that questionnaire. Once they fill that up, you will be able to tell what their inherent risk is. All right, all that thought, because I'm going to show you something in the next few minutes. Then what usually follow, once you determine the inherent risk rating can either be high, it could be medium, or it could be low, all right? But whatever the rating is, all right, it will now come in there. You can see this is like an output. It fits in here, all right? The rating could be, whether they are high in compliance risk, they are high in operational risk, they are high in strategic risk, or they are high in cybersecurity risk. So the output of this exercise here will give you the inherent risk and the area where they are high in. I'm not saying that every organization do it this way. Some organization will just say, you know what, I know the inherent risk, you are high, low, you are high, medium, or low, all right? Then what usually follow after that will now be what we call the due diligence, all right? So the moment you ascertain the level of the risk here, you can see that arrow is feeding into this third area, all right? You now start to carry out what we call conduct the due diligence to determine the overall control effectiveness. Please hold this thought because I'm still going to come back. I'm going to show you something in the next few minutes. So number one, you determine the inherent risk. And this is very important for those that's going to be you're going to go out to be interviewing. Somebody can ask, so tell me your due diligence approach. How do you go about it? This is what you will do. First, inherent risk. I've already defined that. You determine the inherent risk by getting the supplier to complete certain questions. And on the back of that, you'll be able to ascertain whether they're high, low, whether they're high, medium, or low. Once you do that, then what usually follow is your due diligence. But the due diligence, you see, whatever the outcome here would determine the level of the due diligence that you're going to carry out here. So you would agree with me that if a supplier is low risk, all right, then you can't conduct the same due diligence that you conduct against a supplier that is high risk. All right. So low risk will just simply means that it will be less rigor. All right, in terms of how you will carry out the due diligence. All right, it would be less rigor in terms of how you do that. But for high risk, you will go all out. And I'm going to show you something in a few minutes. Okay. So once that is done here in terms of the due diligence, then to test the effectiveness of their control, then what will now follow, is the residual risk. See, the whole idea about this illustration, I wanted to show you the inherent risk and how you come about the residual risk. I said the inherent risk, I'm going to explain it again, not because you don't understand it, but when you repeat certain things, people just get it. The inherent risk, you have not applied any control. You are just only asking questions, all right? But you see, in due diligence, when you're carrying the due diligence, you are now testing the control that the suppliers say they claim to have, all right? So whatever they claim to have, you can see somebody can be high here, all right? But by the time you test their control, they may come out to be, their residual risk might come out to be low, all right? Now, you've been able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that their control is effective, and so therefore, they are a low risk. Please hold the thought because I'm now going to show you something. Please don't leave. I know we've gone a little bit above our time. All right. So these are the sort of questions that you could possibly ask when you're carrying out your inherent risk assessment. All right. So pretty straightforward. You wanted to, let's say you have a company and you wanted to engage the service of another company. Let's say your company is a software development organization, all right? And you wanted to engage, or you wanted to take your software now development into cloud. Let's say you wanted to go to Amazon. No, so let's say you wanted to go to AWS. Let's say that's where you're going, okay? I want to go and develop in AWS, but you're a software company. So you can go to AWS and say, oh, I wanted to bring all of my software into your platform where I can be doing my development. But before I do that, before I start to engage you, all right, AWS, to provide service for me, I need to understand your inherent risk. So what you would do as a company, you would take these questions, you will send it, to your company, you send it to AWS. Let's say the company that you work for is ExxonMobil. Let's say it's ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil want to go and do business with AWS, all right? So ExxonMobil will take these 8 questions and they will send it to AWS. AWS will complete these questions. Once they complete it, then the outcome of the responses, to that question, you'll be able to tell, whether they came across as a high risk or a low risk. Look at the question. So we said number 1 question, does the service involve ExxonMobil data being processed by the supplier? So you're asking AWS to say, all right, the services that you're going to offer for us, will it involve our data being in your cloud environment? AWS will say yes or no, depending, all right? The other question is, what is the maximum classification of the data, proposed to be stored, processed, or accessed by, or on behalf of ExxonMobil? Again, you're asking the question, you're posing the question to AWS to say, all right, I'm going to be using your services, but I have data classification. All right, what level of data, we did involve? I'm still going to show you in a few minutes. I have a spreadsheet I'm going to show you. You send that to Exxon. Sorry, it's not Exxon. You send that to Exxon. You send that to AWS for them to answer. The next question, it says, will any personal data be handled by Exxon or any of the supplier with the personal data process or access from outside of EU. Again, because this is cloud, you're asking again, with someone else, all right, from, if you understand cloud have instances. So there are some instances in the UK, you also have some instances in America. So you can ask, okay, all right, would somebody be able to access this information from outside the European Union? All right, so you put all of this information across to AWS. AWS would answer that, and that would form the basis for your inerrant question. Please just bear with me. Let me quickly now show you something. All right, can you guys see this? Please put it on the chat box if you can see. I know you can't talk to me. But if you're there, can you see? Can you see my spreadsheet? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. So look at this. So you see what I showed you earlier, which was this, okay? So what I've just done is I have put it in the spreadsheet. So if you're sending it to AWS, you would have put it in the spreadsheet like this, all right? So these are my inerrant risk questionnaire, okay? So AWS will respond this way. They can select, so does the service involve ExxonMobil data being processed by the supplier? The supplier is AWS. AWS will come here and said, all right, this is yes. They will select yes, okay? So what is the maximum classification of data? Process, stored, process, or access on behalf of election. All right. So what election would have done? Election would have done their own data classification. All right. So they know their data. They have classified it into different ones. All right. As a matter of fact, election have different or 4 levels of classification. They have public. All right. Public is any information that anybody can consume. So if you go to ExxonMobil website now, all right, if you go to their website, anything that they put on their website is a public data. Anybody can consume it. All right, you can go there and go and listen to it. But you would agree with me that there's some data that not everybody, should be able to see. So anything apart from public, all right, could be either be official, or it could be sensitive, or it could be secret. Okay, or it could be secret. Sorry, it could be secret. So these are different data classification. So so AWS would answer the question, yes, for our cloud, I think the data that you're going to be sending to us for us to process, will be ExxonMobil secret. Okay. What does that suggest? When somebody says something is secret, all right, it means that it carries a lot of weight. It is valuable. In fact, you don't share your secret outside, would you? All right. A secret information could be intellectual property. A secret information could be anything. All right. It could be anything. All right. So they will select that and they will answer all of the old questions. But you see, the whole idea about answering this question as much as possible is such that, whatever that they select from any of these responses would tell, it would tell here whether their inerrant risk is high, or whether it is low, or whether it is medium. So whatever responses that sells here, this place will change. All right. But because of this training, people that's going to come from the real training, all right, we will teach you, all right, how to, as a matter of fact, Tola is going to do that job for us. We'll teach you how to create inerrant risk questionnaire, the possible response that you expect from your supplier, and how the mechanism works. So if you select combination of any of this, it will trigger the response here. So the response can either be high, it can either be medium, or it can either be low. But don't forget here now, if someone is processing data for you and the classification of that data is secret, they are an high risk supplier, because they will be having access to certain information that it would not be available in the public. Does that make sense? All right. So this is how the inerrant risk work. Okay. But for the real training, we will teach you how to use this and how to create one for yourself. If any of my students that was in the current batch or the one that we're completing, I don't want you to feel left out if you went taught this one, but trust me, if you feel the need that you want to learn what this is all about, Tunde Shogalu will make sure that this is incorporated into the next training, and you can take advantage of it. Okay. Can you still see my screen, Tunde? Please let me know. I'm rounding up now. Can you still see my screen? Okay, so you can see the inerrant risk, my PowerPoint slide. Yeah, you can see it. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. I do apologize. I'm conscious of time. Yeah, so you can see how that is now built into the Excel sheet. All right, I'm not saying that Excel sheet is what every organization uses. All right, in some organizations they use different toolings. All right, they are called a third-party risk management tool. A very popular one is what we call OneTrust. All right. If you wanted to learn OneTrust is and how to use those tools, yeah, we also can teach you as well. All right. As a matter of fact, when we get trained, when we train people, we get them to go and write OneTrust exam or some other exams that could also further help them, with their aspiration, particularly around third-party risk management. So I encourage you. We're starting our training on Monday. For as many that are interested, Tunde put our telephone number there. Please, myself, both of us, put our telephone number there. If you need specialized training or a few other things, you have some query, please by all means reach out to us. So I'll finish this in the next 2 minutes. All right. So here now, outcome of the risk assessment. The risk ranking can either be critical, high, medium, or low. All right. That's the output of what I just showed you now. So output of this one, this is what you will get. All right. But don't forget, what now follows after that is due diligence. But I said to you that if the output of a risk, of the inheritance risk is low, you will not carry the same due diligence against a supplier that is low in risk compared to someone that is critical. All right. So the due diligence for critical, high, or medium size, risk from a supplier, you probably will be carrying out what we call the full light due diligence. All right. And this would include, something like on-site inspection of controls, locations, and continuous monitoring. But you see, for a low-risk supplier, all right, you will do what we call the light due diligence. All right. You see what full and light is. I'm not going to be able to explain it here. If you're interested in the real training, we'll teach you what that is. All right. So you carry out either full due diligence or you do carry out what we call the light due diligence. But you see, the full one, it usually require what we call on-site visits. All right. You would have to go to the location of the vendor, all right, to carry out an audit, as it were. All right. You go there, you would also carry out what we call continuous monitoring, which is what I showed you here earlier on. Okay. Continuous monitoring. So you don't do continuous monitoring for all your supplier. It's just those ones that you consider that they are critical supplier to your organization. All right. So due diligence, the full due diligence look at three things. It looked at compliance, security, and user risk. All right. So compliance, like compliance to regulation, GDPR, for example, compliance to other regulation. All right. So when you're carrying out your full vendor due diligence, part of the questions that you're going to be asking your supplier, it will focus on compliance. Then the next one will focus on security, and the next one will focus on user risk. All right. Because of our time, this is what some of the questions will look like. All right. In your due diligence. So if you think about Exxon and AWS, let's say, for now that you have carried out the initial risk assessment and AWS came out to the critical supplier, all right, you will carry out against AWS what we call a full light due diligence. So it means that you're going to be sending them questionnaire that looks like this, all right, with so many information, so that you want to cover all the bases, both compliance, both security, and also user risk as well. But let me quickly now show you example of a full or heavyweight questionnaire, all right? I'm not going to take too much of your time. We're almost done. But Tunde still have 10 minutes that he would like to share with you, all right? Okay, so this is an example of questionnaire that you could possibly share with your third party, okay? Again, for those that's going to be joining us, we will share all of this with you. You don't need to screenshot or cram anything. You don't need all of that. If you decide that you want to be part of this, then we're going to show you all of this. All right. So this one says information security, cybersecurity, data protection questionnaire. All right. It says here, control risk require an assessment to be undertaken as a means of initial due diligence for new product services and periodic thereafter for product or services that are already in use. This questionnaire is provided to review and verify information security, cybersecurity, data protection control, and also supporting process to ensure that supporting processes are in place in relations to third-party, service provider, partner vendors, and also, their product as well. So these are set of questions that you will send to your supplier. So in the case of ExxonMobil, assuming that Paul is the one carrying out, this exercise for ExxonMobil against, AWS, then Paul will take this question, engage with the supplier or contact person in AWS and send this set of questionnaire to them. So this questionnaire, it focuses on 3 major areas. Number 1, information security, cybersecurity. Then it also covers a lot around data, data privacy, GDPR, and all of that. It's quite comprehensive, all right? A lot of information here. So you will send it so you can see the domains, then you can see, the question, then the supplier will respond here. So this is where AWS will put their response. Then Paul, when you are evaluating this, you will be doing the scoring, all right? You will do the score here. The thing about this particular spreadsheet is whatever scoring that you put here, I particularly like it because there's just a whole lot of information here. You can see this chart as well. We give a thorough analysis of whatever input that you put in here. Sorry, whatever responses that you put in here. It would so a lot of algorithm has been built into this. To do the calculation. All right. So this covers different areas. Like I said, information security. Different domains. It covers, you can see it, physical security, everything I've been teaching you. It covers information security policy, that is administrative control. It covers patch management. It covers remote access, like most of us work from home. Then it started going into data. It talks about incident response. I may not be able to go into each of those questions now, but trust me, very, very comprehensive questions. It talks about disaster recovery. It goes on to talk about risk management, data protection, assurance, and all of that. So you would take these questions, you will send it to them, they would complete it, then you would do the scoring, and you will be able to go back and say, all right, so because the mechanism has already been built into here, you'll be able to go back and say, all right, I think they have an effective control in place. Of course, these questions would also come with evidences as well. So it's not all about just saying that, you have this and you have that. You must be able to prove that you have that. But in the real training, we'll teach you, how this work, how you can collect information, how you can also prove some of those evidences. All right, so I would be quiet now. So guys, I want to say thank you. It's been a wonderful time, I believe. I'm sure that you must have learned 1 or 2 things from this exercise. Tunde will spend another 10 minutes with you. It's not going to take your time. Tunde, are you ready? And once that 10 minutes is over, we'll just take questions and off we go. Tunde, are you ready? Tunde, are you ready?
Hi, Wale. Yeah.
Okay. So I will flip the control to you. Don't go more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that we quickly just release the people.
Absolutely.
They can go do their stuff. So guys, I just want to say thank you for those that are still here. Let me give you control. Okay, let me first stop sharing. Have you taken control?
Yeah.
Oh, you've taken control. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. All right. So the recording is still going on. So guys, thank you. Tunde, if you quickly just do justice to what you have there, walk them through our processes. They will take questions. Just let you know, the training starts on the 30th, which is a Monday. Timothy is going to come back. Anybody that is interested, Timothy is going to give you a whole lot of information about the training. They will take it from there. Over to you, Tunde.
Okay. Thank you, Wale. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your patience in bearing with us as we take you through the course of what we're trying to explain. So basically, for everyone that will be part of this training, number one, our numbers are already in the chat box, so please feel free to save those numbers. You can also contact us via email. So what I have on here is, if you join the training, this, is going to be the candidate's journey. Yeah, this is the path in which we're going to take you through. So first and foremost, once somebody had asked a question, is this course also for people that are not, that have no IT experience? Absolutely, yes. You can do it because you have some leverage in terms of work experience and how we can help you with that to translate that into some of these training models that we have. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Timothy, for answering that as well. So that is not a problem at all. So for taking that question, the first things first, because of the way our courses are structured, we have courses that is technical and we have courses that is non-technical. So for anyone that may not be able to do technical stuff, you don't want to do anything heavy and all of that, we will take you through that part. And for you that want to do a bit of the technical stuff, some deep dive into doing other things that are much more technical related, we would also take you through a separate part. So that first part is for you to tell yourself, okay, how do I want to proceed? What do I want to do? And how do I want to go on this journey? So we'll be able to answer that, or we'll help you answer that in the first step. Then the second step would be our pre-course training, just to take you through some of the things that we're going to be doing, where some of the reading materials. So for the people that have asked, oh, how do I get access to the slides and all of that? If you come on the training, you will get access to all reading materials, all slides, all videos, and all support that is needed as per what you need to do. Then on the third phase, basically is when we bring you on board. So when you are fully onboarded, that is when you have access to everything, including some set of other interview trainings and all of those things. We're going to help you with that as well. Then when we start the in-training, so some of the courses that, the course that Wale has touched on today, we also have some other courses, that are going to be kicking off with. So for example, we have cybersecurity risk training, we have cybersecurity essentials and fundamentals, we have GRC, that's information security, governance, risk, and compliance training. So we have a number of courses that would help you through the course of the training. As much as possible, some of the things that Wale touched on today, using some industry or workplace related examples, that is how we deliver the training. What is relevant in today's workspace, what is relevant with as per your roles and responsibilities. Those are the examples that we'll be bringing more to life, to make sure that it is very easy for you to understand. Then on the sixth journey, basically that is after we finish the training, after we must have done the project work. So you will get on board to be able to do a live project where all the things you've learned from your training, you'll come and learn it. All the mistakes you need to make, you will also be able to make those mistakes, just to make sure that at least you are in a confident and comfortable place. Before moving on to helping you with the CV, that you will need to do, you will be the one to write it, but we will tailor and guide you through that step. Then, of course, mentoring never stops, so anybody needs any help, we're always there, just to contact us and let us know how we can help you to help you improve and help you get better. Then, of course, on the final leg is preparing you for a mock interview to eventually be able to secure the job that you desire. So in a nutshell, this is what is required as the steps that you'll be taking once you indicate interest in joining us on this career path or on this career journey. So if there's any question, guys, more than happy to take a question. Wale, if you're still there, happy, we'll just, so that we don't take too much of your time, but this explains it. Please feel free again. Our numbers are there, our emails available. If there's anything you need prior to making a decision, feel free to reach out to either Wale or myself. And we're more than glad, to have our calls taken and all the support that you need to be able to make a decision to do this training. Thank you very much. If there's any question, I'll just take 1 or 2 questions, and yeah, we'll call it a day. Okay. Someone asked, for the technical part, must you have mastery on programming? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's an advantage. It could be, but not necessarily. All right. Okay. Good stuff. Any other question, guys? Just in case. So Wale, we're going to be opening up for questions now, just for another quick 5 minutes if anybody has any question. And so I'll flip control back to you.
Okay. All right. So I think we should just pause the recording because, yeah, we don't need the recording.